For me, this is one of the worst books I read in 2024. This book still now makes me think differently about child influencers and like family content creators. I feel like the chapters were really small and often I'd think, this doesn't need to be a new chapter. Like, look, chapter 9, chapter 10. The dirty little secret of social media is that we are often following people who don't have a clear direction in their life and may or may not really know who they are. I will reread this book at least every other year. Hi everyone, I'm Eden-Olivia. I hope you're well. Welcome! Happy New Year. Happy 2025. I hope this year so far has started out good for you. If not, don't worry, I'm here. We're going to be talking about the best and the worst books I read in 2024. I've lined up the highlights here. Also, last year, every month, I rounded up like the books I read monthly. So like January books I read, etc, etc. I didn't do December, but I read these 3 books. Husband Desired, Love Not Required. This book was a fiction book. Not gonna lie, there was nothing wrong with it. I just didn't love it. I didn't finish it. I got here. Do you know what this book made me realise? I'm really bored of the whole haters to lovers. I don't really care. It's always the good looking guy who's just rude, annoying. I started reading it, I thought, do you know what? I just don't want this. I'm forcing myself to read this book and I'm done. So yeah, I stopped reading it. I mean, the plot, the idea, it's just not my vibe. But I could understand if somebody loved this book, it's just not for me. I also read this book, God is a Matchmaker, 7 Biblical Principles for Finding Your Mate. Very interesting hearing about their marriage. So much advice, tips. It was a good read. I started it in Thailand and I think I finished it when I got back. And then this book I read was called Saw. This was such a good book. I actually read it on the plane from London Heathrow to Doha. Go me, read it on one of the planes. Anyway, yeah, this was a good book. I really enjoyed it. It's very interesting hearing about his life, TD Jakes. One thing I will say though is if you are like an entrepreneur, a million out of 10 would recommend this book. It was very much giving entrepreneur vibes. I'm not one. Maybe I will be in the future, but not right now. So yeah, would recommend that book as well. Anyway, now for the best and worst books. I've literally just put them in any order, but we are going to start with Wicked. For me, this is one of the worst books I read in 2024. I went book shopping, feel free to watch the vlog, and I picked this book up. Bear in mind, I've wanted to see this in the theatre since I was at secondary school. You know, like when you see it on the buses, literally this picture. Always wanted to see it, just still haven't got around to it. The film came out in 2024, so I thought, yeah, let me read the book before the film comes out. Regrets. This book was the weirdest book I've ever read in my entire life. I still stand by that to this day. There was just a lot going on in this book and just, I again went in with the wrong mindset. I thought it'd be like a fairy tale, cute, sisters, one gets jealous, they all live happily ever after at the end. Didn't happen. Also, this is meant to be a prequel, but the ending is like the ending of The Wizard of Oz. So I found that a bit bizarre. Also, I mean, I feel like they did explain why she was green, but they also didn't. I can't really remember and I'm not going to reread this book. But yeah, I just still remember when she was born and she bit the nurse's finger off. The fresh out the womb baby bit the nurse's finger off. Weird, bizarre, odd, wouldn't recommend. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't have bought this book and I wouldn't have read the book. I wouldn't have finished the book. I don't know why I kept reading it, but you know when you're like, I just need to know what happens? And I've bought this, I've committed now. Wouldn't recommend this book. Okay, so next we've got Shoe Dog. I really enjoyed this book. One thing about Nike, I've just always liked the vibe, just do it. That slogan enough is, do you know what, if I was an influencer, if I was famous, I would work with Nike because I just love their whole marketing side of the company. So when I saw this, oh, do you know what, a girl I used to work with, she posted this on her Instagram story, literally forever ago. I took a screenshot and then I think it was last year or the year before, I can't remember. I bought the book and loved it. It was so interesting. Literally, he begins at like just leaving uni and then where Nike is now. There was just a lot to it that I just did not expect. Even him being really young in his 20s and trying to start the company, all the times he nearly didn't have the money to just carry on. These entrepreneurs, these like people who are just, they just think different and I love it. I, a million out of 10 would recommend reading this book. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Not sure if I would reread. I mean, it was really interesting though. But like with autobiographies, I'm like, I kind of know the story now, you know? It's not like I'm learning. But then in this book, I do feel like I did actually learn a lot. So yeah, great book. Another book I would not recommend. So that book would this book would not. This is called The Good Ones Are Taken. I still feel like this guy looks like Michael B. Jordan. Just saying. It's called The Good Ones Are Taken, and I've took my bookmark out. I don't even know what chapter I got to, but I stopped reading it. I think after reading Wicked and another book that's coming up, after reading those two books in January and March, and I didn't enjoy either of them, but I finished the books, I thought never again, and I literally haven't done it since. So yeah, this is a book that I just couldn't get into. I've just remembered, do you know what? I said it in whatever month I read this book. Do you know what? At the end of this video, I'll include like a playlist of all the books I've read. I feel like there was just too much detail. So much detail that it was like, you know when you're reading a book or you're watching a film and you're like proper in it, you forget about literally everything going on. And then they do or say something and you're like, oh yeah, I'm reading a book or I'm watching a film. This book. Yeah, there was just too much detail. Wasn't into it. And I just thought, no, I'm kind of over this. So yeah, didn't finish this book and I wouldn't recommend it. A book I will recommend until the end of time. Winning the Battle of Your Mind, Battlefield of the Mind. This is one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life. I've read it a good few times and I've decided it's definitely going to be a book that I read like every year or at least every other year because it's so good, honestly. Game changer. Let me just read some of the chapters for you. So the mind is a battlefield, don't give up, when is my mind normal, a confused mind, the mind of Christ. There's like different parts. There's like part 1, which is all about the importance of the mind. Part 2, conditions of the mind. Part 3, wilderness mentalities. So it describes like mentalities. Don't make me wait for anything, I deserve everything immediately. Or someone do it for me, I don't want to take the responsibility. I don't deserve God's blessings because I'm not worthy. My life is so miserable, I feel sorry for myself because my life is so wretched. There's even stuff about like daydreaming and how to, you know, recognize whether you should be thinking about something or not. Love it, love it, love it. Definitely in my top 5 books of all time. A million out of 10 would recommend. The next book I read was The Great Divorce. Now, this book I read originally in 2022. Yes, read it in 2022 and yeah, it was just interesting because I think it was Hayley Pham on YouTube. She recommended this as a Christian book, so I thought, okay, let me read it. Read it the first time round and was like, this is just a bit random, a bit odd, didn't fully get it. And then because of that, this in 2024, I thought, I want to reread it. But this time I listened to it on Spotify. Do you know what? Spotify, putting books on Spotify is one of the best things they've ever done. Got through so many books last year. I think I actually read like 80. Thanks Spotify for your help. But yeah, I listened to it this time and it just made so much more sense. Loved it. I really got it. And I think I said it before, but it's an allegory. So I think I was reading it as an actual book, like a, you know, just like a normal book, but it's an allegory. So yeah, loved it. Really did enjoy this, listening to it this time. I think that's the thing with some books, it's good to listen to it, and some books it's good to read it. And for me, this was one that listening to it really helped me. But I think I would reread this and I'd actually read the physical book now that I get it. Yeah, if you want to be challenged, would recommend. Another book I would recommend that I've read in 2024 is called Nightbloom. When I think about this book, I loved how it made me think about how different societies are, the Western world is compared to other places in the world. The best bit of this book that I really liked was that you saw it in one person's point of view and then you saw the exact same situation but in another person's point of view. And I think I said it when I reviewed this book originally. When I first read it, I was like, oh my gosh, are we literally going to go through everything I've just read? This is a waste of time. But it wasn't exact, like word for word, but you just got to see why one character would do one thing, why one character would say something, and then the intent behind it. So that was interesting. One of their mums was a bit of an egg, not gonna lie. And then I do like at the end how it all kind of comes together. I like this book, I would recommend. Okay, so a book I wouldn't recommend. One Summer. Again, I've took out the bookmark, but I'm pretty sure I got onto like chapter 18 and we still hadn't met the love interest. The main character was annoying in this book as well. Her boyfriend cheated on her, spoiler alert, and she was willing to take him back. Like, she hadn't even heard an apology and she was like, you know, if he does apologise then I'll take him back. And FYI, he did not apologise. She was just a bit annoying. Also, even in her career, like, she was on the verge of being fired and just wasn't doing anything to try and prevent being fired. Like, she wasn't working hard. She just wasn't doing anything. And I don't think she liked the job. So then just leave and put everyone else out their misery. Wouldn't recommend, wouldn't reread. I feel like the chapters were really small and often I'd think, this doesn't need to be a new chapter. Like, look, chapter 9, chapter 10, chapter 9, chapter 10. 2 pages later, chapter 11. It was just a bit much for me. Wouldn't recommend. An interesting book. There were loads of little stories in it. I think, where does it say something about Black Mirror? Oh yeah, someone reviewed it and said, as surreal as the season of Black Mirror, a stunning debut. This was just a bit random. This is why it's in this video, because I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, but I'm still kind of, like, when I saw it, I was like, oh, that book. Yeah, there were loads of little stories in here, a bit of AI in here, which was quite interesting. I've only seen one episode of Black Mirror. I don't even know what the episode was called. The Bear? I don't know. It's the episode where the girl wakes up and she's like, where am I? And then at the end, I'm not even going to ruin it in case someone does want to watch that episode, but I found it really stark and scary. But yeah, it kind of gave me that kind of weird vibe. There was just a lot going on in here. But it was like intriguing because I'm still like, as I've just seen the title, like the book again, I'm like, oh yeah, that was an interesting book, wasn't it? I mean, to be fair, I do have loads of little, where I folded the pages. I think if somebody wanted like a sci-fi, thrillery, AI-y, loads of little stories in one book, then I would recommend. I personally wouldn't reread, but yeah, I think I would recommend if somebody was looking for this kind of book. But if someone was like, oh, what have you read this year? Or what book would you recommend? This is not leaving my mouth. If someone was like, oh, have you read a weird book? Or someone was like, oh, have you read like a sci-fi, AI, futuristic kind of book? Then I would recommend this one. Another book I wouldn't recommend. Do you know what? Thinking about it, this book kind of reminded me of, oh, this book that I read in December. Kind of giving similar vibes. This book, Isabel and The Rogue, again, the love interest. Did they like each other at the beginning? I can't really remember, but yeah, I feel like I got quite far in this book as well. I mean, I've folded down page 213 there, and it has 326 pages. So, I mean, I got through quite a lot of it, to be fair. But yeah, it wasn't for me. The main character, the guy, was annoying. I loved the whole, she's a Mexican spy living in France, I believe she was in. I found that really interesting, but that wasn't the main part of it was just kind of like a backstory, which I think should have been the main story and then the love interest in the back. But yeah, wouldn't recommend, wouldn't reread, didn't really enjoy this book. And I got really far in it. Probably should have quit sooner, to be fair. But yeah, I think mainly the guy was annoying. A bit like the book I read in December. The guy was annoying and I thought, I'm not putting myself through this, so wouldn't recommend. I really enjoyed this book. Allow me to introduce myself. This book, I said it when I reviewed it originally, this book still now makes me think differently about child influencers and like family content creators. Laws need to be put in place, I'll tell you that. Now, nothing sinister happens, but for me, it was when the kid was, she's like, I don't know if she was like 7, 8, 10, I don't know, but she's like still a child. And she says to the mum, like, she doesn't want to film content, she just wants to enjoy her birthday party. And the mum's a bit like, honey, we are filming. And from then I thought, oh yeah, like this, let's be honest, this definitely happens. Where the kid's just a bit like, I don't want to film, I don't want to, and the parent, this is literally how they make money, is like, sucks to be you, get in front of the camera, we're filming. Yeah. And obviously the mum's never mean, but there is something about parents making money off their kids that I think, unless you're like a really good parent and you put the kid first, yeah, it must be difficult, because I guess the roof is over the head because of the kid, but if the kid doesn't want to film content, you need to stop. But if that's what pays the bills, I guess the parents are just like, tough, you have to film. So yeah, this book really made me rethink family content. I enjoyed this book. It really made me think, and that's what I really liked about it. It was like, oh yeah, you know? So allow me to introduce myself. Would recommend, because I've not spoiled what happens at the end. This book was definitely the worst book I read in 2024. It's called Someone Like Me, and I read it in January. Great start to the year. I read it in a day because I was reading it and I was like, this is annoying me. I'm not wasting another day on this. Finished the whole book in a day, and the main character was the worst. She's basically, is she 40? I think she's nearly. Charlotte is aged 39 and a half. Literally says it there. So she's a grown woman. She's a grown gal, and she has an affair with a married man, which is literally disgusting. And he's famous. He's like, we're separated or whatever. You're not divorced. You're still legally married. So sorry, hun, but no. Didn't like it, didn't enjoy it. She's annoying. She feels sorry for herself. She knows he's married and she just carries on seeing him. Literally have some grace and decorum. Have some morals. Disgusting. And then at the very end, plot just really takes a turn. And then the book ends with someone saying to her, oh, I don't even know what the exact sentence is, but they basically put in the title of the book, Someone Like You. And I thought, this girl is not someone anyone should aspire to be like. It's not a flex. Didn't enjoy it, wouldn't recommend. No. No, 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 no. Worst book, definitely. Oh, do you know what book I did really enjoy? Winning the War in Your Mind. This was a great book. I feel like I read this quite earlier on in 2024 as well. It reminds me a bit of The Battlefield of the Mind by Joyce Meyer, but this one has more like science in it and like psychology, and that's what I found so interesting. Another thing I remember loving about this book is how like spread out the text is. It really is the little things in life. Oh, a little highlighted bit. I'm gonna read this actually. It says, are you also a prisoner, missing out on life you want but believe you can never have? You crave close relationships but are paralysed by the fear of rejection. You want to try something new but assume you are destined to fail. You long to be debt-free and give generously but feel certain that could never be you. You dream of losing weight and exercising but feel resigned to fail yet again. You want to change but think you never can. Why? You are constrained by a lie, something that doesn't exist. The enemy has arranged enough hurtful circumstances in key places of your life in which you got just enough jolt, a bit of a shock, a string of pain to your heart, that you have decided trying even one more time is just not worth the risk. What makes it worse is that the number of places where you have stopped trying is growing even larger. Love it. Love this book. And again, as I said, I just love the whole psychology side of it. And then at the end of every chapter, there's like questions. But yeah, enjoyed this book. Would recommend if you're after like a biblical, psychological book that will help you renew your mind, other than the Bible, obviously. Would recommend this one. It's great. One of my favourite fictional books I read in 2024 is The Love of My Afterlife. I still love this. Stunning. I just love this book. The back, someone reviewed it and said, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days meets The Good Place. Original and romantic, I loved it. That person couldn't have said it better. This was such a good rom-com book. There were funny bits. It wasn't too soppy either. Both the characters were great and had like really good backgrounds. So like the things they were doing, it made sense why they were doing it. I just loved it. And like throughout the book, she's like trying to fall in love with this guy. So you're like following her and just so much crazy stuff happens. It's great. 1,000,000 out of 10 would recommend. Love this book. A 5-star fictional book for me, which is apparently rare, as you've seen in this video. But yeah, loved it. The Love of My Afterlife. Stunning. Do you know what another fictional book I absolutely loved was called The Reunion? This book was based on 6 old friends, and basically they meet up at their 10-year secondary school reunion. And I thought I'd get a bit lost because you're literally following 6 different characters and each chapter is a different character. But one thing I loved about it is at the beginning of each chapter it would say the character's name and then like most likely to succeed, so what they were known for. So if you was like, who is this person, you'd remember, oh, that was the popular kid, or that was the kid who was in a relationship with whoever. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. All the main characters had, obviously 10 years had passed since they'd last saw each other, so there's loads to catch up on, loads to learn, loads to see like why they were different from then to now. Yeah, I did enjoy this book. It was great. Again, definitely a good fictional book I read in 2024. One of the best ones I read, I would say. But yeah, this was a good book. Honey, I didn't finish this book, I've just remembered. Yeah, this book, oh gosh. The main character again was an ag. Do you know what? When the main characters are annoying, I just can't even get into it. Whereas when the main character in a film or a TV show is annoying, I can force myself to watch it. The other characters are great, so you just keep watching it. But with a book, I can't put myself through it. This character was so desperate to be famous. She literally says in the book she'd do anything to be famous. And I just think, you need to have some morals, hun. It's never that deep. Yeah, she was annoying. There were song lyrics in here, like, let me find here. I've already found one. Here. If this was Beyonce's autobiography and she's talking about why she wrote Halo, the true meaning behind it, and then she includes the lyrics, absolutely fine. This is a fictional book. I don't really care about the lyrics, unless they're real songs, but they're not. Yeah, didn't care about that. Oh, there was something else that I found really annoying about this book. What was it? other than the main character being an ag. The guy, the love interest, he was also an ag. I liked the friend. I said this when I first reviewed it. I liked the friend who was also in the group and then left early. Her life story sounded way interesting. The main character was not. This is another thing. They like included articles. This isn't real. This is a fictional book. And I guess if I loved the storyline, then I would have probably actually appreciated this. So I do get why she's probably put an article in and song lyrics, but I just didn't really care about the book, the storyline, the main character, the guy, the articles, the song lyrics was just enough. Yeah, this was definitely not a highlight for me. Wouldn't recommend, wouldn't reread. That's all I've got to say. And I actually got quite far in this book as well. Can't remember where I got to, but yeah. This book, called The Instrumentalist. Oh, stunning. It's like that, but so it's really nice. Even now when I think back to this book, it was weird. The student-teacher relationship wasn't into. All throughout the book I was like, where is this book going? What even happened at the end? I can't even remember. The beginning bit gripped me though. I mean, like the first page, I said this in my first review. I really don't like when personifications in a book. The chimes shiver. Please, it's not human. The chimes lick the cockles. Please. Oh. So that bit, I was a bit like, I think I was on the train as well, and you know, and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got the book now, I've committed, I've got an hour till I get to wherever I'm going. So that was kind of annoying, but I'm glad I carried on, because by the third chapter, you get into the main character's mum and her whole life story, and it's so intense. And one thing I really did take from this book is it just really made me appreciate my life and my mum and how I've been raised, because some people get rough starts in this world and we need to be grateful, we need to count our blessings. But other than the beginning bit, that was so interesting. I feel like I've been more interested in the mum storyline than hers. She just wants to be famous, a bit like Honey. The thing is, she's actually really talented. But yeah, there's just a lot that goes on. She's the worst friend. The main character again was a bit of an ag. I mean, to be fair, based on the way what happened to her early on, I don't think it's on the blurb, so I'm not going to ruin it. But yeah, to be fair, I've just thought now actually, based on what she went through as a child, maybe it does make sense that she just doesn't know how to be a good friend. But yeah, there's like a few times in the book where the friends are like, please help us, and she's just like, sorry, I need to be famous. I need to be a famous violinist, and this could potentially ruin my career. Which does make sense, but also if your friend needs your help, you help them. Anyway, I wouldn't recommend this book and I wouldn't reread it, and every time I think about it, I just feel like it was weird. So yeah, there's my review on that. To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods. Now, I read this book in Jamaica in April, and I read this book also just while travelling. I literally read it on the plane to Jamaica. I mean, I did sleep on that plane as well. And then I finished it on the coach to the airport, to the hotel. And again, the main character was quite selfish. She cared about herself and her family, which most people do. But then there are like, I don't know, thousands, millions or billions of, no, maybe not billions, but thousands or millions of other people struggling, going through the same thing her and her family are going through, and she just doesn't care, which I thought was, have some compassion, you know? I did actually enjoy this book. I didn't realise until I got towards the end that there's going to be a second book, so kind of on a cliffhanger there. And I did kind of like the love interest in this book. One thing I will say though is whenever I usually read like a series, I say whenever I read a series, literally I'm thinking of Twilight and The Hunger Games, I usually start it when the series is finished so I can just read them all back to back. So if book one ends on a cliffhanger, I don't care because I can read straight away book two. I wasn't prepared for this. I need to Google when the second book's coming out actually. But yeah, I'm not like in a rush like, oh my gosh, when's that second book coming out? But when it does come out, I will be buying and reading it because I need to know where this goes. And it was interesting, like they had magical elements and things, you know, but yeah, I need to know where the storyline's going. Okay, we're down to our final three. End on a high. This book is literally like the battlefield of the mind. One of the best books I've ever read in my entire life. Definitely top 5 books of all time. Avoiding the Trap of Being Offended. I remember years ago when I was in church and this was a book of the month. And I wasn't even a strong reader at that point, like I barely read. But as soon as they said at the front, like, oh, the book of the month this month is Avoiding the Trap of Being Offended, I literally was like, I need to read that book. It just spoke to me. And my family read this book and it transformed our lives, okay? It helps you realise when you're offended, recognise what an offence is and just release the offence. Love it. Similar to Battlefield of the Mind, I will reread this book at least every other year. Probably every year. Just such a good book. Can't get enough of it. Love it. And sorry, the cover speaks volumes. So yeah, if you've heard that title and you're like, that sounds like a bit of me, get reading. I loved this book as well. Another one of my favourite books of 2024. Who Are You Following by Sadie Robertson. I actually read this book before, I think in 2023 or 2022. And the little blurb bit says, pursuing Jesus in a social media obsessed world. Say no more. This is what the book's all about. Like, who are you following? Social media, how it can influence you. Another book that I will reread every year or every other year. I love Sadie Robertson's books. And I love, you know, like the little box outs. Do you know what? Presentation in the book really matters to me. And there's just a lot that I have highlighted. Let's have a little read actually. Oh, this is a good one. The dirty little secret of social media is that we are often following people who don't have a clear direction in their life and may or may not really know who they are. So true. One thing I've learned, I mean, it's January 2025 now, and I've literally not been on social media for the past few weeks. And one thing you do realise is how much it actually influences you and how much time you spend on it when you don't go on it. And that is so true. Often we are influenced by these random people we're seeing on TikTok, and it's quite worrying, to be fair. And you know what, if ever you go on TikTok and you're like, oh, I want to find that video I watched like 10 minutes ago, and you go on like watch history and you're scrolling and you're like, oh my gosh, where is this video? And you have to go down quite far to see the video you watched 10 minutes ago. That's how much content we're consuming and we're not even aware of what we're seeing. So yeah, if that kind of speaks to you, would recommend this book. I've actually just realised that there are lots of audiobooks that I listened to last year and they're not here physically, but one of them I would recommend, Driven by Eternity. That's the only one that's popping into my mind, by John Bevere. Love that book. I've read it again. Oh, I've told you this before, it's my brother's book and I lent it to someone and they've not given it back. Fake. Anyway, love that book. One of the best books I've read in my entire life, in the top 5 of all time. And I actually listened to it on Spotify. So before I read it physically, but obviously I can't, it's not in this house, someone else has got it. So I saw it on Spotify and was like, stunning, I'm gonna have a little listen. And it was so good. There's like a chapter in the book where it's like a fictional world. And I thought this is gonna be interesting. And it was great. They had actual actors in there acting it out. There was music in the background. It was amazing. So yeah, if you need an audiobook for 2025, Driven by Eternity by John Bevere, 1,000,000 out of 10 would recommend. The Alone Advantage, 10 behind the scenes habits that drive crazy success. This book was so good. This is definitely one of the best books I've read this year. It was very practical, very easy to understand and listen to. It was scientific, it was biblical, it was just amazing. There were so many like case studies and testimonies as well about successful people and their habits. It kind of reminded me of the Atomic Habits, but this was even better. And just how like the little day-to-day decisions impact the rest of your life. I loved it. And because it was an audiobook, I just kept rewinding it because I was like, that was so good, I need to write this down. I wrote so many notes on this book. I loved it. Literally can't fault it. 5-star from me, can't recommend it enough. I've recommended it to my entire family. The final book I'm going to talk about of the best and worst books of 2024 is this one called Dominoes. This is one of the best books I read last year. Loved it. I read it in Jamaica, as I said, and I was gripped. I couldn't wait to like go to the pool just to sit and read it. It was great. So many different themes in here, and just a quick blurb on it. She's engaged. That's not a spoiler. She's engaged to a guy. They've got the same surname, and they find that out literally the first time they meet. They're not related. But then her friend, who's the friend's kind of annoying to be fair. The friend finds out that her fiance may have owned her family as slaves because she's mixed race and he's white. And yeah, the story goes from there. And she obviously loves him, but there's this part of history that may or may not be a thing. So yeah, loved this book. That is the end of all the books, the best and worst books I've read in 2024. I hope you guys have got some inspo for books you should read and also books you shouldn't read. I point out this one mainly because obviously the film came out in 2024, and I think part 2 is coming out this year in 2025. So if you like the film, you like the theatre show, and you're like, oh, let me read the book, don't do it. Don't put yourself through it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to keep the book content coming. Hopefully I'll see you in my next video. Bye!